What is the best example of a real-life butterfly effect that you have experienced or heard of? My sister's muffler fell off her car on the way to a family function. It wasn't a big deal, but it meant that she could no longer lend it to my mom later that week as it would be in the shop for repairs. My mom had already been told she could use the car, and had already made a doctor's appointment. My uncle volunteered to drive her instead. This minor change in plans altered when my uncle and aunt would be able to leave the city by a few hours. They were supposed to go to their farm, but instead my aunt waited at her mother's while my uncle was dropping mom off. My aunt's mother had a heart attack and would have been completely alone that afternoon if not for my sister's car trouble. Because my aunt was there, she was able to call the paramedics and they were able to save her. It's crazier when you start thinking about everything that led to her losing her muffler. She probably hit a small bump somewhere on the road that made it fall at this moment. This bump could have been caused by the worker that built the road. Maybe he was sloppy this day because her wife left him. Maybe she left him because she had met a man on her way to her job. Maybe she got that job from looking in the newspaper, etc. I had plans with my girlfriend for Saturday night a couple months back. I received a last-minute call from my close buddy, inviting me to drive an hour and a half north of where I live to a party. I call my girlfriend, explain the situation. She said go ahead and have fun. I'm just filling out online job applications anyway. I'll just finish doing this. We can just see each other tomorrow on Sunday. I was so happy and relieved. I promised her a great night and had a couple gifts to give her as well. Things were going so good with this girl. As the night progressed, by the way, the party was fucking amazing. I text her and ask her how things are going. She said that her friend was trying to drag her out. I encouraged her to go out, so she did. I text her a couple hours later, no response. I call her, no answer. The next day, I call her a couple times, no answer. I text her, no response. She completely flaked on our date with no explanation. I find out a couple days later that she is in a relationship with a guy she had met that night when her friend dragged her out, and I encouraged her. They are now engaged. TLDR, I encouraged my girlfriend to go out with her best friend when she didn't really feel like going out because I was out and having a good time. She meets her current fiancé and doesn't even bother to call me or text me back to let me know. So they met and got engaged within 2 months. Many marriages that have moved that fast do not last. That's true, and I do kind of expect things to fall apart rather rapidly, but I hope they don't. They are a cute couple, and though I may feel a bit jealous, she's happy. That was my primary focus in the relationship, making her happy. Now she is, so I guess I did that really well. I can't help but ask myself sometimes, what the heck does this guy have that he can swoon her in less than 24 hours, and make her damn near forget about me? I feel so beta. I have the love of my life because of my 8th grade math teacher's bad judgment. In 8th grade, I was doing unusually well at algebra. So well that my teacher decided to recommend me for freshman year honors algebra. I was surprised because math had never been an interest or a strong suit. I was much better at my English classes. Anyway, during that ill-fated, 1-semester-long attempt at honors algebra, I met a guy, let's call him Nathan, who invited me to be part of his homecoming group, as I knew nobody at the school. One of the girls in that homecoming group, we'll call her Linda, had a slightly younger sister, we'll call her Anna, who tagged along for the drop-off at the meetup spot. I only caught a glimpse of Anna, but it burned into my mind. She was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen, but I didn't get to talk to her. Weeks later I got an invite to Linda's birthday party, piggybacking on Nathan's invite, as he was friends with that group already. At that party, I became friends with Anna, and I was in love with her for years before I did something about it. We're getting married in March. If that math teacher hadn't had the terrible judgment to put me in a class I had no business being in, I would never have met anyone in that group, including my future wife. When I was 3 years old, my father gave me a cheap, plastic toy airplane for Christmas. We didn't have much money, and my parents did their best. I fell in love with aviation because of that toy. I mean, I've been obsessed with it my entire life. This drove me to enlist as a helicopter mechanic and spend 10 years in the Army. Last year, my love of aviation drove me to buy a ticket, that I could barely afford, to the annual air show. It was there that I met a representative from a helicopter flight school and learned that I could use my GI Bill benefits to pay for flight school. Now, I'm a private helicopter pilot and I'm working towards additional ratings. All because we were really poor when I was a child. My dad ended up giving me the greatest gifts a parent could give a child when he gave me that toy plane. Imagination and passion. Please tell me you thanked him a lot when you realize this. Sounds like you're an appreciative person, but double checking. I can't possibly thank him enough. He and my kids have been really supportive of all of this. I couldn't do this without them. I decided to use skip school one day, which my mom allowed. Since I stayed out, my mom decided to stay home and we would go fishing. It didn't rain, so we just sat around the house. My aunt we hadn't seen in years decides to visit that day. We take an impromptu trip to her house, where my aunt talks my mom into moving up there. This event leads to my sister meeting her husband and having 2 kids, my other sister getting raped and having a kid, my mom meeting my stepfather, having a child at 40, and nearly getting murdered by said husband. All of these major life-changing events can all be traced back to me skipping school. What made you want to skip school that day? Honestly, it's been so long ago that I don't remember. My mom would let me skip a day every 6 weeks if I kept my grades up. So, if you went to school, your aunt wouldn't have shown up? If I had went to school, my mom would have went to work instead of taking a personal day. My aunt wouldn't have found where we lived, and we would have never moved, as my aunt wasn't sure the house she stopped at was ours. My grandpa went off adventuring as a young man with some of his pals, a buddy who boxed and a buddy who played guitar. My grandpa didn't have any special skill like that, so he washed dishes. These 3 guys just ambled across America, boxing, strumming and scrubbing for enough cash to make it to the next town. After a while the adventures tapered off and the other 2 fellas made their way back to their corners of the world, but my grandpa couldn't scrounge up the money to get back to Illinois. So he kept washing dishes for quite some time, hoping for a lucky break. That break came in the form of a wallet he found lying on the sidewalk with enough cash for a bus ticket back home. He wasted no time. He met my grandma back in Illinois, settled down, started a family. And as a result, I exist. Sometimes I think about that man that lost his wallet, and how mad he must have been when he realized. I owe him my life. When I was 26, I donated everything I owned, quit my job, and moved across the country to live with strangers in a town where I knew no one. A few days later, I lost my wallet. I was alone with no money, no job, no ID, and no way to replace my lost cards. This seeming failure at changing my life caused me to finally apply to grad school on a whim, to the only school for my profession that was still accepting applications. That school happened to be the #1 school for my program, and I never would have applied otherwise. Somehow I was accepted, and 3 months later I moved across the country again. To make a long story a little shorter, I owe my very happy successful life to that tragic lost wallet. Now, because of your story, I like to imagine someone else's life changed for the better as well. I tripped over a rug at work, but caught myself before I fell. I didn't bother to fix it for whatever reason. An hour later my coworker, she's an older lady, walked in and tripped on it too, but she ended up falling face first into a door. She dislocated her shoulder pretty badly, also and needs surgery. She's been on medical leave for about 3 months. Last I heard she might also sue the company. Whoops. Suing the company because, for all she knows, she's clumsy. Thanks, world. Pretty much. She's known to sue people left and right. Plus she was also carrying like 6 bags when she was walking into the building. 1. On August 28, 1997 it rained in Oxford, England. 2. On that day, cricket practice was scheduled but cancelled at the last minute due to the weather. 3. 2 men decided to stop off at a pub next door because they didn't want to walk back in the rain. 4. 1 went for a piss. 5. 2 women noticed the other guy and took an interest. 6. The other guy came back from pissing and noticed his friend talking to the women and joined in. 7. They're now both married to the respective woman they met that day. 8. I'm the child of one of those couples. I would never have been born if it didn't rain heavily at that time on that day. The one who pissed or the one who didn't? The one that pissed. First off, let me tell you a little backstory. My mom and dad were married in Mexico, but soon after their wedding my father immigrated to the US. He was a legal resident so he could come and go as he wished, yet my mom was not. He would visit, get my mom pregnant and soon after go back to the US to work. Well, while living here he would carpool with a friend to go to work. He never missed a day because he was saving up to bring my mom, my 2 siblings and I to the US so we could all finally be together. One cold winter morning he woke up and decided not to go to work. It was heavily snowing out. That never stopped him from going to work, yet that day he decided otherwise. It turned out that the guy that he would carpool with got in a car accident and died. It's scary to think that my dad would have died along with him. We would have never come to live in the US and overall life would be so different for my family and I. I decide to pee off a bridge. My life ends up ruined and my children end up taken away from me. Butterfly effect. I ended up pissing on a cop, seriously on accident. Got arrested and my ass beat. Ended up in the hospital for a week and a half. Went to jail for a month after because I had my wallet, with cards inside, and no one else had the money to post my bail. I was released after I waited in jail for my court date. I lost my job and my kids during the ordeal because I wasn't there. While I got time served for public urination and assault. My life got ruined. How did you lose your kids? I wasn't there to take care of them. Ex filed an emergency petition for custody and the judge haven't seen it fit for me to have them back since. On Monday, September 10, 2001, my father received a call to let him know his job interview for tomorrow had to be postponed until that Thursday. Because his would-be employer had overbooked his schedule, my father was not in the World Trade Center when it went down. My mom had uncomfortable digestive symptoms for a year or so that couldn't be explained. Her doctor ordered a colonoscopy and discovered colon cancer. She quickly had surgery and recovered well. She decided that it was important that my dad be screened just in case. Turns out he also had colon cancer. 6 months after my mom's surgery, my dad had a portion of his colon removed as well and recovered quickly. After recovery, my mom still had the same initial symptoms. It turns out she was lactose intolerant. Since both parents had colon cancer and no telltale symptoms, my mom decided I needed to be screened as well. So, my mom becoming intolerant to lactose later in life led to me getting an otherwise completely uncalled for colonoscopy at the age of 27. My existence and my children's existence stems from people dying in Mormons. Maternal grandpa died when the chain snapped on the engine he was working on in his driveway. Mom joins the Mormon church at 17 and moves to California from Fargo, North Dakota to live with her aunt and uncle. Paternal grandpa died when my dad was 2. His stepfather didn't like him, so Dad moved to California from Central Illinois to live with his aunt and uncle. Dad Mormon friend invites him to a party where he meets my mom. They eventually get married and I'm 4 of 6. Oldest brother not accepted to BYU decides to go to Arizona State University. I go on Mormon mission to Argentina. Come home and move from Indiana to Arizona. Met Buddy at church the first Sunday I had gone to one party with before Argentina. Tells me about a party for singles. I reluctantly go and see a guy I knew in Argentina. Meet up with him and go to another party where I met my wife, who I'm interested in initially because she had lived in Argentina to learn Spanish and travel for a few months. 3 kids, and 10 years later we still are together. About 10 years ago, my aunt was out celebrating one night with her friends because one friend who had been working tirelessly to get her dream job had achieved so. Drinks around, and she's pretty strict on her personal rule of not drinking unless there was reason to, meaning cracking a beer after work to relax wasn't her jam. Flash forward to the next day and she's at working fighting a hangover. Telling herself she can do it, she's got like 4 hours left, not a big deal. Cue shitty customer with a bad attitude and a sense of entitlement and things go south. Took her about an hour to deal with twat boy over there and she's fed up, energy drained, decides to ask a coworker for a lift home. Getting home she found her 2 dogs tangled up in each other's collars after roughhousing. She doesn't think they were like that for long since they were fighting pretty hard to get out. Legs stuck, paws twisted, strangling sounds. She freed them and they ran around panting and heaving and all excited like happy-go-lucky dogs are that she was home, early to boot. Neither dog seemed fazed by the fact that they almost strangled to death tangled up in the other's collar. She kept close watch over them but neither needed veterinary care. After that she never left her dogs with collars on in the home. Even after those 2 had passed, the 2 she has now don't use collars unless they're walking. She tattoos and microchips her dogs since they don't wear collars with information in the house, in case they get out without the tag info on their collars. She doesn't like to think about what could have happened if she hadn't been drinking, if her friend didn't call her up all excited wanting to celebrate. Even when she was fighting that hangover, she would have finished her day at work. If it wasn't for the mix of her getting a hangover from drinking and having her energy zapped dealing with a shitty customer, her dogs would have probably been dead when she got home at the end of the day. If I had called a girl seconds earlier, her brother would have been able to catch her leaving. She wouldn't have gone to that party. Those guys wouldn't have drugged and raped her. She wouldn't have flipped her car on the drive home. The guy who tried to pull her out of the car wouldn't be in a coma from the truck that hit them, and she wouldn't have died a week later from infections the first day she showed brain activity. This is always going to haunt me. Long story, my father died and I was depressed because of that. One day at the university I broke in tears and some guy I know approached me, comforted me and told me about certain group that was supporting him and basically the experience was changing his life. The only problem, entering there was pretty expensive, but it's totally worth it, I promise. I didn't give an answer immediately, but I had saved money and was so emotionally low that really considered accepting his proposal. Before I could give an answer, the swine flu epidemic emerged and I fell ill, spending around 2 weeks in bed. The very first day I could go outside, I had contact with my nephew, who happened to be with varicella. That was another 2 or 3 weeks in bed. After so much time, I lost contact with that guy and never entered the group. But several months later, I met a girl, a former classmate. She was unsettled and told me that half of our department entered that group and she was leaving, but was scared from the harassment she knew she was going to suffer, since another girl had left earlier happened the same. The group was a large group awareness training scam, posing as a coaching group, resulted in a brainwashing experience that destroyed several lives. Also, it operated under a pyramidal scheme, so members has to be recruiting people permanently. The guy who contacted me was one of the most fervent in the bunch, being the only one who stood until the very end. Eventually the group's founder ran away with lots of money. Hadn't I fallen ill, it's very likely I would have accepted the proposal and would be completely poor and crazy by now. Since then I appreciate much more my free thought. I decided to take my kiddo for a walk in the woods this evening. I couldn't find my other shoe. I found my left shoe, put it on, and for the life of me I couldn't find my right shoe. We searched the house for a few minutes and found my other shoe. My hand is on the doorknob and we hear gunshots. Someone decided to drive down our road and shoot out the window of their car. If we had left right when we decided to go, we would have been at the edge of the wood or right inside of them. They are next to the house. I can't shake the feeling that my missing shoe was a damn good thing. I probably wouldn't have been born if Ivan the Terrible hadn't murdered his son. He did, which put the Romanovs on the throne, which let Catherine the Great become empress. She invited Germans to farm lands she conquered along the Volga River. My ancestors were among these Germans. They came from all over Germany and never would have met if they hadn't been invited to Russia. As it is, I exist in part because one asshole murdered his kid 500 years ago. My grandpa did communications for the army during World War II. He had a radio set up in a room of a partly destroyed building, and was listening to the chatter as a battle was fought. A German soldier came into the room and raised his gun. My grandfather's gun was not within reach. He looked at the gun, the soldier looked at the gun, then lowered his gun and continued on. The only registry I've found him in has him listed as deceased on that day, but he returned, had children, and one of those children had me. I feel like these sorts of things are best told in reverse, so here we go. On the first day of school I couldn't find out where to go, so I sat alone in a classroom before the girl who is now my girlfriend of 2 years found me. If I had been able to find out where I should go, we wouldn't have met. I was at that school because I was an exchange student in America from Denmark. Out of thousands of host parents, I got placed in this one because of a single remark of my favorite movie. How that became my favorite movie is, of course, also butterfly effect filled. I should have traveled with another company, meaning I wouldn't have been with that host family. But I was late, and that company was sold out. I only became an exchange student because I really wanted to go to LARP school, but my dad thought that was too nerdy. My little sister's magazine had an ad for the exchange program, so he offered that instead. I only wanted to go to LARP school because one of my friends had died in an accident, lots of butterfly effect there too, causing me to meet a guy from that LARPing school at the funeral. I only befriended my now dead friend because my name accidentally got switched with another's, placing me in the same class as him. My name got switched because it was so similar to another guy's name. I got named that way after a person my mom had met on the streets of London decades ago. My mom was only on those streets because her car had broken down and the man offered to help. I could go further back, but I'll stop here. I'm with my girlfriend due to my mom's random encounter in London 30 years ago. A close friend smoked 2 packs a day. Every day, he'd walk to the 7-Eleven, buy a couple packs, and walk home. He wouldn't buy cartons for some reason. Liked to change his brand occasionally, I guess. Anyway, his apartment was right across the street from the 7-Eleven and he would always take the same stoplight, etc. Smoke a cigarette on the way over, hang out outside the 7-Eleven to finish it, throw it in the garbage, then walk in, buy 2 packs, and smoke one on the way home. The guys at the 7-Eleven knew him by name, loved the guy. He was always friendly, and they knew his schedule. Home from work around 7, come over, grab a couple packs. Sometimes grab a 6-pack of beer. So, Eventually he decides to quit smoking, has a tough time of it, tells the guys at the 7-Eleven he wants to stop smoking and they tell him good luck and encourage him. They encourage him so much they refuse to sell cigarettes to him when he has a moment of weakness. He freaks out, heads back across the street in anger without waiting for the light, gets clipped by a motorcycle speeding through the intersection. Motorcycle crashes, rider is tossed. Ambulances come, both head to same hospital. Turns out motorcycle is ridden by a guy who runs his own construction business. Feels pretty bad about it. Talks to my friend about his business. My friend hangs drywall, but doesn't like his boss. Eventually rider hires friend at a higher salary. Friend has good job for a bit. 2 years later friend is doing very well, promoted numerous times, now has a team of guys working for him. Gets a phone call, boss was in a motorcycle accident, in hospital, friend rushes there directly. Boss ends up being paralyzed, has some brain damage from a concussion that slurs/slows his speech. Within a few weeks boss has friend running the business for him. Friend is doing great, business is doing great, boss decides to sell the business to my friend. He decides to take it over and buy it. Friend now owns construction business and has grown it a lot. A few years later my friend gets an offer to sell the company to a larger company. Takes the money. My friend is 42 years old and retired, worth over $10 million now, all because he quit smoking. Well, and because he worked his ass off when the opportunity arose. But still, if he hadn't decided to quit smoking, who knows?